Hi, I'm Sean. This is the devlog number 3 for Pterodactyl Attack. This big yellow thing that you see here is our tool that we use for building uh, environment backgrounds. So after our artist sends us this big SVG, I split that up into multiple layers. But each layer is going to have its own thing. It's going to have its position in space. It's going to have collision geometry so you can't shoot through them. And it's also going to have parallax information. So whenever you tilt your phone, it's going to, let me just show you that real quick. It's going to shift a layer by a certain amount, and that's called parallax. And also, every time you enter or exit a level, it's going to play a certain animation. So this is the tool that we use to apply all those different properties to each layer. So clicking up here at the depth button will activate the depth tool. So this is where I can just click on any of these layers here and I can adjust their position in space. You can see the pterodactyl in front of it, and what that does is it just tells you the scale of the pterodactyls once it's at that layer. And if I want to move it closer or move it further back, I can just drag it on this visible frustum down here at the bottom. And that will determine the drawing order as well as the position in space. So moving on to the collision, again, if I try to shoot through this layer, this polygon is going to determine if it has collided with that layer. So let's delete this polygon and try to create it again just to show you what it looks like. So I click new shape at the bottom and I just start clicking until I finally come back to the original point at which it will close the shape and set that shape as the collision for that layer. So once I have returned back to the original point, it's going to close the shape, and now we have a shape which blocks all bullets for this particular layer. And I can select other layers to see that, to look at their collision geometries. And of course, some layers aren't going to have it because it's just not necessary. Let's move on to the parallax section. Alright, you can see that there's a strange set of 3 bars up here. The middle bar is slightly faded. This is just the center bar. But the 2 side bars demonstrate the distance, the parallax distance, whenever you rotate your phone. And I believe I capped it around 30 degrees. So once you rotate your phone 30 degrees to the right or to the left, it's going to move this layer by this shown distance. So let me drag this at the bottom to kind of simulate the rotation. So if I pull it left and right, you can see the full distance that the layer can move. If I wanted to dramatically increase that for whatever reason, you can see that that layer is going to move that exact distance. So if I want to make it a lot more subtle, then I push it over here and test it to see how far it moves. Okay. Moving on to the animation portion. Each layer, let me zoom out here so you can see the extent of that layer. Each layer is going to have 2 control points, and it's A and B. So the animation is going to start at A and it's going to transition to B. So selecting this, you can see that it starts out by obscuring the screen, and then it ends by moving all the way to the left so you can see. Okay, and just playing it shows that it moves between those 2 control points as expected. Now you can see that there are other layers here that are still moving. Now those are a different animation type that is specified by this combo box down here. So if I select this cloud, you can see that it's not an intro animation anymore, like that first layer that I showed you, but it's actually an idle restart. And what that means is it's going to be using this animation throughout the duration of the game. So while it's idling, it's going to be using this. So let me select A first, and then look at B. So it's starting out on the right, and it's going to move to the left. If you can see the red cloud here, go from this portion to that side. Okay, so once I play that animation, you can see that this red layer started at some random point between those two layers, because I didn't want all the clouds to be moving at the same, in line with each other. So if you have an idle animation, it's going to choose a random point between those two, and then it's going to continue on with that animation. Now what you just saw is once it reached the end, it started over at the beginning again. So that's what idle restart means. If I was to select one of these sky blobs in the background here, it's not a restart, it's a round trip. And that's just a way to specify what to do once it hits the end of the animation. And round trip, what it does is instead of restarting, it goes back in reverse. So it takes a round trip from the first point to the second point and then back again. And this time box is just there to specify how long it takes to get between that first point and the second point. And that covers all the animations. So each layer is going to have an intro animation, an idle restart, or an idle round trip animation. And that's just the simple things that we needed to create our parallax animations. Alright, once that's done, I can move on to another background. And I can do the same thing for the volcano. Let's look at the collision ones because they're kind of interesting. These are the geometries that I use, so you can't shoot through these, stalactites and stalagmites. Okay, and you can see the tutorial level here. It's really simple. It's just a single layer that moves into this arena here. Alright, that covers it for this episode. Stay tuned for our next devlog, in which I'll talk about our last tool. And our last tool covers menus and HUDs. Thanks for watching.